On and we're live.
Good morning, Summa scholars. Welcome to the Daily Summa. Today is May 24th in the season of Eastertide, and it is also Saturday. Good morning, Joe.
True, it is Saturday. Good morning.
How you doing?
Pretty good.
Very good, very good. We are moving into a new question today. Question 19. The will of God. That sounds like a fun one. We're going to find out what's going on in the will of our Creator.
I'm not messing with my phone, by the way. I'm making sure it's not another alarm that's gonna.
Very good, very good. What's that? Oh, you said we're at 99 subscribers.
That's right. Yeah.
That's pretty good. And then it's also coming up on the 100th episode.
It's true.
And I was saying, wouldn't it be quaint?
At least I think.
Wouldn't it be quaint if we got our 100th subscriber on the 100th?
I mean, today would be better.
Day? Well, let's say 100 on the 100th, and then like 1,000 more in the next week.
That'd be good.
You never know what can happen in this crazy life of ours. Well, anything to share, or should we just get started?
No, nothing to share. Although I did forget to switch over the slides last night before the show, so let me do it right now.
Can you do it as we roll? As we're rolling? As the ship is sailing?
I forgot to upload them entirely.
Oh, really?
Make time for 2 minutes. I'll be right back.
Okay, guys. We got 2 minutes as we get to see
Let me not bring my microphone upstairs.
the handsome Joe pass in front of the camera. He's leaving his mic downstairs. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Daily Summa. If you're just now watching for the first time, we are on a beaver galleon sailing through the great abyss with St. Thomas Aquinas studying the Summa Theologica. The Summa Theologica was chosen because it is a beautiful condensation, whatever, of all of theology put in a orderly fashion, as Thomas says in the introduction. If you've not seen the introduction, you can look on YouTube for the introduction to the Daily Summa, in which we talk about the philosophy, ideas, and methods of this teaching. It is a quick flyover of Thomas. Every single word of the book will be read out loud, and then there will be some commentary, usually tending from me towards mystical prayer and let's say Carmelite spirituality, even though it's just Christian Catholic theology. In moving towards prayer, humility, and being a gentle dove under the staircase, as per the Song of Solomon. But we are using Thomas Aquinas' Summa Theologica as a springboard, a jumping off point, to lead us into deeper communion with the beloved, which, if you don't know, is that which is commonly referred to as God. So, the quick flyover is an important point. All of these points in this book can be entered into greater and greater depths, but this is, as I say, a quick flyover, just so that our minds daily are in the things of God. The Summa Theologica is chosen because it is a, as I said, condensation of, it's not the word I'm looking for, but of all of theology, and there's tons of scripture quoted in it, and there's tons of apostolic and church fathers quoted in it, and we even get a little smattering of Aristotle and different philosophers, Avicenna, some Muslim philosophers. And part of the ethic of the Daily Summa is that we are in the Côte de Latran in France, the seedy portion of France where Thomas taught, sitting on bales of straw and studying with words of Aristotle, which at the time of Aquinas, some of the popes had said is scandalous somewhat to study, and yet they studied it anyway. A bit dangerous, a bit out there on the edge. And as we sail in this beaver galleon, if you don't know what the beaver galleon means, maybe we'll make a video someday of what that means. But essentially, we realized that if there were beavers on a galleon, the one thing they would want to do most in life is to chew the wood, to chew particularly the mast. And that would be their downfall. And that we are all beavers on a galleon, sailing through this life. And one of our greater cravings, which would be the passions, as the Desert Fathers would speak about in the Philokalia, our passions, to chew on the very life, the very support, the very bark of our safety, the thing that keeps us afloat in this life. We are all beavers on a galleon. So let us set sail. Let us continue sailing, I should say. And go into question 19 of the Summa Theologica regarding the will of God. Let's hear what Thomas has to say about it. After considering the things belonging to the divine knowledge, we consider what belongs to the divine will. Why did he go will before knowledge, do you think, Joe? Why wouldn't it be first considering the divine will and then the divine intellect? Any ideas, any thoughts on that, Joe?
Not really.
It is because the intellect is, the will is serving the intellect, and the intellect is the highest order, particularly in us. In God, all is one, but in us. So Thomas is speaking from the human perspective and building a staircase of divine ascent, and he's doing it, as he said in the introduction, in an orderly fashion. So first he addresses the intellect, and now we move down to the will. Again, in God, this is all one, so that may be confusing to people. Why are we making these divisions and separations? Science, the root being skia, is to cut and to divide. We cut and divide so that we may more clearly understand, just like when we, what's that word I can never remember that you do to a frog? Dissect. Just like when a doctor may dissect an animal and then eventually a cadaver, in order to understand how these things fit together. The purpose being not diabolic, the purpose not being to keep them separated, but the purpose being to understand how they work together. That the end goal, the telos being to bring them together in wholeness and in peace. First consideration is about the divine will itself. The second about what belongs strictly to his will. The third about what belongs to the intellect in relation to his will. Bringing them back together. About his will itself, there are 12 points of inquiry. Number 1, whether there is will in God. 2, whether God wills things apart from himself. 3, whether whatever God wills, he wills necessarily. 4, whether the will of God is the cause of things. 5, whether any cause can be assigned to the divine will. Whether any cause can be assigned to the divine will. 6, whether the divine will is always fulfilled. 7, whether the will of God is mutable, that is, does it change? 8, whether the will of God imposes necessity on the things willed. Interesting. 9, whether there is in God the will of evil. We have to talk to the Manichaeans on this one, see how that divides up. I saw a rabbinical talk yesterday. I'd seen it before. I was rewatching it. And he says something that I often hear the Jewish rabbis saying, which plays into their invincible ignorance, in my opinion, although I'm right. He said that he was talking about evil and how God works in the world and the plagues of Egypt and how he worked with Pyro or Pharaoh. And he said the Christians can't explain evil. That's why they have a separate, independent devil and 3 in the Godhead. That right there should show you that the Jews have been taught that we believe, like the Manichaeans, in the separate devil that is outside of the will and control of God. And that is why, think of it from the Jewish perspective. If you've been taught this your whole life growing up, you truly believe that Christians believe in a Manichaean way, that there's a separate, independent devil, and that explains how there can be evil in the world. How could a person who thinks that we believe that ever move out of their true knowledge of God in regards to, as much as the Jews still have true knowledge of God, how can they ever move over into Christianity? It'd be like asking you, a Catholic, to believe in the Manichaean teaching. You would never, ever do that. That is why I believe God has great mercy on the Jews now, because they have many, many misunderstandings about Jesus and Christianity, which is a huge wall keeping them rightly from coming to God. Now, could they study more on their own? Could they still be culpable because they ignore certain things? That's each individual, and God will work that out. That's not for us to judge. We don't know what they know. We don't know what they've been shown. We don't know how their heart works. These are things for God to judge. But what is clear is that they definitely have a skewed understanding of what we believe. And that skewed understanding makes it to where, if their heart is right and if they've done all their due diligence and et cetera, all the proper qualifications, it means that they cannot come to Christianity. It would be a sin for them to, because they would then be doing something they know to be heretical, and what we also would believe heretical. They're just confused about the truth. So let us pray for our brother Yaakov, that Jacob would reveal himself to his brothers speedily and in our day. 10. Whether God has free will. 11. Whether the will of expression is distinguished in God. And 12. Whether 5 expressions of will are rightly assigned to the divine will. Whether 5 expressions, obviously there's going to be some things we're going to learn there that we don't know. What are these 5 expressions? What's Thomas coming to teach us? Let us begin. Article 1. Whether there is will in God. If you're just joining us for the first time, I have assigned names, playfully, to the objections so that we can have more fun here. On this Beaver Galleon, we like to have fun. We don't like this dry theology. Remember what the term theology originally meant. Theology originally meant someone who's seen God. John the Apostle is called the first theologian. He sees God on the Isle of Patmos. You could possibly say on Mount Tabor, I don't know. But, and then there's a figure named Simeon, the new theologian. I think he was in the 1000s. He was called the new theologian because he also had an experience of seeing God. Others had done it previously, but I don't know why he's just the new theologian. But the point that I'm getting to here that's important is theology, properly understood, is a divine vision that can happen in this life. It's, I'm assuming, what happened to St. Thomas Aquinas after he had written all of this stuff we're studying, where he told his secretary, everything I've written is straw, burn it. Because compared to the divine vision, where all of these disparate understandings come together into one wholeness, and also through the beauty of the Shekinah, the feminine presence of God, the divine glory, Keter, everything being revealed, this all is boring straw and theology. So we do not want to stay at this level of theology, as it's called today, where people go into rooms and egghead, as my old teacher, Dr. Rebard at the University of St. Thomas would say, egghead analysis of words. We want to elevate ourselves from the words into a divine influx of light and fire. All righty then. Objection 1, we're having fun. First objection is Larry. Larry is one of these beavers on the Beaver Galleon, and he always gets things wrong. Thomas will come later in his replies to the objection and answer them. Objection 1, it seems that there is no will in God. Well, that's going to be wrong, because it's Larry. For the object of will is the end and the good, but we cannot assign to God any end. Therefore, there is not will in God. Larry is always taking one particular word and one particular concept out of context and then building his twisted theology upon it. But that is for our good. Thomas will explain it later. Objection 2 from Ralph. Further, will is a kind of appetite, but appetite, as it is directed to things not possessed, implies imperfection, which cannot be imputed to God. Therefore, there is no will in God. We always toggle back and forth between divine and human perspective. From our perspective, will would imply perfection because we are in the world of shadows. Everything is not perfect. Things are in potency, moving into act. But in the divine essence, he is pure act. There is no potency. So, Ralph, I'm sorry, you're wrong once again. Next up is Shimon. Objection 3. Further, according to the philosopher, the will moves and is moved. But God is the first cause of movement, and himself is unmoved, as proved in the physics. Therefore, there is no will in God. On the contrary, says Thomas, the apostle says that you may prove what is the will of God. That's an argument from authority coming from the book of Romans. Therefore, we know that there must be a will of God just from the authority of the apostles. But now, Thomas is going to move into the respondio and give you the philosophical and rational reason why this is true. I answer that.
Turning of the page, maybe.
The turning of the page today is sponsored by High Gothic Casual.
Hey, you got it. Good time.
High Gothic Casual,
Nice.
making swank and I was going to say flashy, but swank and arresting clothing in a Catholic persuasion. Go check it out. High Catholic.
Come on.
High Gothic Casual. Speaking of high Catholics, we're talking about, there's some further beavers on this galleon who have a little problem with substance initiation. That is Billy Bob and Plutarch, but we haven't got to them today.
I think Reuben sometimes.
Reuben sometimes dips in.
Yeah.
All right, I answer that. There is will in God, as there is intellect. Since will follows upon intellect, there it is, the hierarchy. For as natural things have actual existence by their form, so the intellect is actually intelligent by its intelligible form. That's philosophy speech, just saying that the intellect is intelligent. Now, everything has its aptitude towards its natural form. That when it has it not, it tends toward it. And when it has it is at rest in it. Our intellect is pulling towards truth. Our intellect desires truth. And our will desires the good, which has to do also with pleasure. So once the intellect has truth, it rests in it. Once the will has goodness and pleasure, it rests in it. As the macaque in the steam pools of Yokoyoyu in Japan. The will rests in it. That's what Teresa of Avila says about the little dove that flies off looking for a place to rest, the reference being Noah's Ark. The little dove flies off, it's looking for its place to rest. That's the whole life of prayer. And finally, when it comes to the seventh mansion's union with God, it comes to rest. And St. John of the Cross says people who come to that stage usually die shortly thereafter. God takes them home because they can do in heaven what they're doing on earth. Intercede for the oilam, for the people. It is the same with every natural perfection, which is a natural good. This aptitude to good in things without knowledge is called natural appetite. Whence also intellectual natures have a like aptitude as apprehended through its intellectual form, so as to rest therein when possessed, and when not possessed to seek to possess it, both of which pertain to the will, the seeking part. Hence, remember also the metaphor that's used of intellect and will. A charioteer in its chariot. The charioteer is the intellect. He's guiding the chariot. The chariot is moved by the horses, which have great power and force. So your intellect, a weak little man, still has the power to direct these powerful and strong horses. Your will is like the horses. It's moving and constantly seeking things. And our task is to be a good chariot driver and drive ourselves through this life in a way that doesn't make the wheels come off. Hence, in every intellectual being there is will, just as in every sensible being there is animal appetite. And so there must be will in God, since there is intellect in him, and as his intellect is his own existence, so is his will. There we get to it. The whole point, which we should have seen coming, that in God these things are one. Adonai Echad. God is one. The word Echad meaning a multiplicity of things that are in a unity. The word Echad would be used like the grapes that Caleb and the spies brought back from the land of Israel. It's one bunch of grapes, but it has numerous grapes in it. Or the prophet Ezekiel, I think it was, taking the 3 sticks and tying them together. That is echad. That is one stick now. A multiplicity brought together in unity. God is echad. God is one. Reply to objection 1. Thomas trains his intellect upon Larry. Although nothing apart from God is his end, yet he himself is the end with respect to all things made by him. And this by his essence. For by his essence he is good, as shown above in question 6, article 3. For the end has the aspect of the good. It's what I said. All of it is one in God. It's not one in us. That's what Larry didn't understand. He's using human reasons and applying it to God. Reply to objection 2. Thomas turns his eyes upon Ralph. Will in us belongs to the appetitive part, which appetitive is the root is appetites, your desires, which, although named from appetite, has not for its only act the seeking what it does not possess, but also the loving and delighting in what it does possess. It'd be like if someone were seeking a bride. Let's just say ridiculously they were seeking it for like 53 years. I mean, that would never happen because God would never be so cruel as to make a person wait that long. But just saying it did happen. Their will is seeking and desiring to come to a place of resting and delighting in the beloved. In this respect, will is said to be in God as having always good, which is its object. Its object is good. Since, as already said, it is not distinct from his essence. So Thomas wants Ralph to know that the will is directed towards the good, but the will can rest in the good. There's another function of the will. So even though God is not seeking, he still has a will that's resting and enjoying. What is being enjoyed? Well, it should be clear. We'll get more into this when Thomas talks about the Trinity, which I'm super excited to see what he's going to say about that swampy confusion. But the Father is resting in the Son. The Son is resting in the Father. The love between them is spirating the Holy Spirit, in whom they all rest and who rests in them. It is a love relationship, eternal, eternally begotten Son. Reply to objection 3 to Shimon. A will of which the principal object is a good outside itself must be moved by another. If there's a good outside, some other thing must move it. The other thing is moving it by drawing. There's 2 ways to move something. One is by pushing it, which is what men tend to do, generally speaking. And there's another way to push something, or to act upon something, to cause something. That is to woo it, to draw it. And that's usually the feminine aspect. That is why Mr. J.R.R. Tolkien brilliantly, when he shows 2 people being tempted by the ring, one Gandalf and one Galadriel. It's Galadriel, right? He brilliantly shows the difference between masculine and feminine temptation. Gandalf is tempted to power, control, pushing. And he says, if I had this ring, I would take it for the desire to do good, but it would overwhelm me in power and it would be destructive. When Galadriel is tempted, she says, all will love me in despair. She's saying, I will have the power to draw everyone to me, and I will deny them. This is what happens in the twisted heart and intellect of we humans. Men usually want to overpower others, conquer nations, conquer women, and the woman wants everyone to be drawn to her, and then she rejects and watches them just crumple. And oh, poor little boy wanted it. Poor little boy never going to get it. So cute. All right, but the object of the divine will is his goodness, which is his essence. Hence, since the will of God is his essence, it is not moved by another than itself, but by itself alone, in the same sense as understanding and willing are said to be movement. This is what Plato meant when he said that the first mover moves itself. There's a way that we talk about movement, like rocks falling down a cliff, like when our hero from Dragon Slayer drop the rocks in front of the dragon's cave lair. But there's another thing where you can be moved by something. That was a very moving story. Moved by a woman's face seen across the room. This is another way of speaking of movement. In the divine life, there is movement in an eternal movement. There's an eternal procession of the Son from the Father. All right, Article 2, whether God wills things apart from himself. Let's just hit these objections, and we'll get into the meat and potatoes of it tomorrow. Objection 1, Larry, back up on deck. Larry says, it seems that God does not will things apart from himself. For the divine will is the divine existence. But God is not other than himself. Therefore, he does not will things other than himself. Larry suddenly forgot that there's a creation. Just forgot. He's busy looking at fishing and looking stuff off the bow. He's not paying attention. Objection 2 from Ralph. Further, the will moves the willer as the appetible, the appetite, as stated in the anima. If, therefore, God wills anything apart from himself, his will must be moved by another, which is impossible. Of course it's impossible, but you've framed the question wrong, Ralph. We'll get into it more tomorrow. Remember, this is all straw. Meditate on it. Think about it. Pray about it. But sit in silence and get to know your beloved through it, or else this is all useless. Go and pray. Amen. We're done.